Greetings, YouTube. The other day I saw somebody post something about how the whole MSG link to headaches and people's negative responses to MSG, monosodium glutamate, which is a flavor enhancer and found in many foods, um, was bull. That it never happened. That it didn't occur to anybody. It didn't ever actually happen. It was all, you know, people had maybe they had a real headache, but they linked it to MSG when in fact it wasn't nothing to do with it. Yada yada. You get the point. Now, I know someone who's very close to me, and they avoid MSG because MSG makes them feel ill. And they didn't say this flippantly. They did the experiment themselves. They ate the food that didn't have MSG, didn't have headaches. They ate the food that did have MSG and had headaches. It's not a double-blind experiment. They're not researchers, or not a researcher, but they satisfied themselves and they feel better when they don't eat things with MSG in it. I never questioned it. It's not my place. It's none of my damn business. Um, and I think it's important to remember that even if the whole MSG thing is BS for many people, it doesn't mean it's BS for all people. Now, I say this as a person who has a reaction that is uncommon to a very common chemical. If you have hives or a negative response to certain kind of allergens, you could be very well advised to take Benadryl. Over the counter, dirt common, everybody has access to Benadryl or the generic version thereof. So it's very common for people to do that. Also, there are people who use it for to help them get to sleep because it has that effect. And so, as a first line defense, that's a very common response from like ask a nurse or a practitioner of some variety or urgent care. They're going to suggest you take Benadryl. Well, I can't take Benadryl. I'm allergic to Benadryl. Benadryl gives me hives. Ironic, I know, but the reality is that the medication that is supposed to help alleviate allergies and hives and things like that will in fact give me hives, a very specific type of hives. I get them on my hands. It's very odd. So I don't take things that have Benadryl in them, which does limit my access to a lot of chemicals that may very well help me otherwise, but I just can't take Benadryl. I know I'm probably not the only person on the planet with this, but I've never met another one. I have never met a person who reacted the way I do to Benadryl. So I think it's pretty darn uncommon. So even though many people, most people, the vast majority of most people can take Benadryl safely to alleviate the symptoms of, minor medical issues, I can't. Which is why I don't tell someone who tells me that MSG makes them feel ill or gives them a headache that they're full of bull. Because it's not my place. They could be in the same boat I am with Benadryl. And I think it's important that we remember that when someone tells us something. Now, it is quite possible that someone's making up a story for attention. It's very possible that somebody just wants to special treatment. I understand this. It could be a symptom of some deeper issues when people, hypochondria being related to some trauma and things like that. I get that. But the reality is you really can't get hives from Benadryl. I am living proof. So I have no reason to believe that there aren't people who take MSG and get headaches. So I don't call people out when they tell me they may have a somewhat unusual response to any particular chemical reaction. Now, if somebody tells me that 5G waves are giving them headaches, I'm going to say, all right, I'm sorry to hear that, and then I'm going to get away from them. That's not happening. Okay? Radio waves are not giving you headaches. That's not how that works. You are surrounded by and have always been surrounded by radio waves for your entire life. There is no human in the world that has not been, under the subject of radio waves of some variety for the vast majority of their existence. We're just in that era. And if you live in a place like I do, you're surrounded by them constantly. So yes, with someone who thinks that, 5G is giving them headaches or it's going to give them cancer, it ranks right up there with people who think that there are microchips in vaccines. These people are not talking about a real world response to a chemical. They're talking about fantasy, conspiracy. But there are folks that can't take Benadryl, and I'm sure there are people who can't eat MSG. I know one of them. So I give a big grain of salt to anybody who tells me something that may be a little, unusual. They could be telling me the truth. They could not be BSing me. Just because a vast majority of people are not being adversely affected doesn't mean everyone isn't. So I think it's important not to call people on allergies until you know that they are actually bullshitting you, which means that you are going to be giving them the opportunity to bullshit you. I understand that. Your gracious acceptance to take their word, at face value can be used against you. And that is what it sometimes sucks for being a nice person. You are trying to be empathetic and kind, and people will take you to the bank for that if they can. But most won't. Okay? And so it's important to remember that some people may not know that multiple things can be affecting them, and they may have linked a medical issue with something that was not causing it while not actually addressing the issue that was causing it. That's how people work sometimes. That's why researchers do double-blind experiments and things like that to kind of weed that stuff out, get the the chaff away from the wheat, as it were, when it comes to data. Most people don't do that. So I try to be kind. I try to realize that someone could be just vastly ignorant. They think that 5G is giving them cancer, or they just are one of the outliers. That's just what some people are. They're on the fringe. They're on the ends of that bell curve, right where I am when it comes to Benadryl. Out there all by my lonesome, maybe. I don't know. I've never met anybody who had a negative response to Benadryl. I don't know how common it is. So if anybody out there else has ever had a negative response to Benadryl, I'd like to know. We could form a club. All right. So try to be kind. Be aware that someone may be lying to you. But I don't assume they're lying to me out of the gate.